The movie starts in ancient times when Rome is run by corrupt twin emperors Geta and Caracalla. In the African kingdom of Numidia, Hanno lives a calm life with his wife Arishat. However, peace is interrupted by an invasion of the Roman army. Hanno and Arishat put on their armor and join the rest of the citizens to listen to their leader Jugurtha make a defense plan. Before leaving, Hanno and Arishat exchange rings and promise to look out for each other. Soon the Roman ships led by General Acacius appear, so the Numidians open fire with their catapults and bows. The ships take heavy damage. However, Acacius orders his men to keep moving. Once the ships reach the fortress, the Roman army lowers platforms and invades. Acacius continues to lead as he brings down soldiers with his sword. Hanno does the same on his side, killing Romans at impressive speed. As the Romans storm into the fortress, Arishat shoots her arrows from above. When Acacius sees her, he orders his own archers to fire, and Arishat is shot dead. Hanno watches in horror, and a Roman hits him from behind. While unconscious, Hanno watches the mythical ferryman take Arishat into the afterlife. Just then, he wakes up and finds the dead body of his wife, so he cries before the Romans capture him. Afterward, all the citizens, including Hanno, get branded as slaves. Next, the slaves are sent to Rome in the ships. During the trip, Hanno notices Jugurtha has a serious wound and helps him wrap it up. Jugurtha thinks he doesn't have much time left and remembers the day he found Hanno as a child in the desert. This triggers a memory in Hanno's mind. He was a kid living with a good family, but his mother sent him away when the Romans attacked his home. Eventually, the ships arrive at Ostia, the port of Rome. Acacius is received as a hero, and the twin emperors celebrate him. The slaves are taken to the Antium on the outskirts of Rome, where Macrinus oversees the gladiator training. Jugurtha, Hanno, and a few other slaves are released in a practice arena where they must fight feral baboons. Jugurtha refuses to fight and drops to his knees as he waits for the end. Hanno wants to save him from the creatures, but it's too late, and Jugurtha dies. When the baboon comes after Hanno, he chokes it to death with his chains, which impresses Macrinus, and he decides to buy Hanno. Afterward, the slaves are taken to Macrinus so he can judge the new recruits. Hanno refuses to speak, so Macrinus orders gladiator trainer Vigo to fight him. At first, it looks like Hanno has a disadvantage, but soon he fights back with impressive skill. Then Hanno is sent to the private chambers, where Macrinus explains he chooses gladiators for their rage, and Hanno has lots of it. Hanno finally talks to say his goal is to kill Acacius, and Macrinus explains he can achieve that if he wins enough fights in Rome. Meanwhile, Acacius reunites with his wife Lucilla, the daughter of the previous emperor. He admits he's tired of the twins' tyranny, so he and Lucilla begin making plans to rebel against the emperors and make Rome great again. Sometime later, Macrinus brings Hanno to a party in the city thrown by Senator Thrax. Hanno and one of Thrax's slaves are forced to fight with swords to death in front of the emperors. Hanno has no choice but to stab the slave with the sword. Geta is very impressed and asks Hanno where he's from, but Hanno answers with a quote about hell from Virgil's book, the Aeneid. Thankfully, the emperors find the poetry amusing and look forward to seeing him in the arena. After the party, Macrinus scolds Hanno for getting cheeky in front of the emperors and asks where he learned such words. Hanno says his city had a Roman prisoner, and he picked up a few stories from him, but Macrinus doesn't believe him. To Hanno's shock, he's paid 2 coins for the fight and learns that gladiators can save up to buy their freedom. That night, in a hidden chamber, Lucilla and Acacius meet with a few senators to share their plans to save Rome. Acacius explains the Roman army is loyal to him, and the senators agree to support him. A few days later, Hanno and other slaves are brought to Rome for the gladiator games in the Colosseum. The emperors receive Acacius and Lucilla on the main seats, and the crowd chants the general's name. After a few words from Acacius, the slaves enter the arena and gladiator champion Glycio comes in riding a rhino. Hanno acts as the group leader and makes a strategy to dodge the rhino's attacks. Hanno runs some dirt through his hands, which reminds Lucilla of her former lover Maximus, the protagonist of the first movie. He throws the dirt at the rhino to make the beast crash against the wall. Glyceo falls off the rhino and starts fighting Hanno. Geta remembers the quote Hanno shared at the party, and Lucilla takes it as another clue. When Glyceo manages to knock Hanno down, Caracalla chooses blood, but Lucilla asks for mercy. Geta gives a thumbs up to spare Hanno, who says he doesn't want to be pitied by the Romans. In just a few moves, he manages to stab Glyceo and kill him. In the gladiators' quarters, Dr. Ravi takes care of Hanno's wounds. After the fight, Lucilla goes to her private quarters and puts together the clues she's seen today. The quote and the running dirt confirm Hanno is Lucius, the son she had with Maximus. When Lucius was a kid, he was the only legit heir to the throne, so Lucilla sent him away to save him from the people who wanted to kill him for power. Lucilla cries as she realizes her beloved son is back and invites Macrinus to share a meal. She tries to act casual as she asks about his slaves, but Macrinus can tell she's hiding something. Later, Macrinus asks around and learns that Lucilla used to have a son who disappeared. This information helps Macrinus start putting Hanno's story together. In the evening, Lucilla escapes through a hidden tunnel and sneaks into the gladiators' cells. Hanno reveals he does remember her and his real name, but he says Lucius is dead, and he's only Hanno now. Lucilla tries to explain herself, however Hanno angrily yells at her and kicks her out. When Lucilla returns home, she tells Acacius that her son is alive, which is overheard by a maid. Afterward, the next gladiator fight starts. The arena is filled with water and a few sharks are swimming in it. The opponents open fire with flaming arrows. Hanno tells his team to keep rowing, and when they're close enough to the other ship, they destroy their oars. Since their enemy can't move, Hanno's ship rams right into their enemy. Then Hanno and his men jump on the enemy's boat to start killing them. Hanno grabs a crossbow and shoots at Acacius, but a fighter pushes him, and he misses. The arrow lands between the twins, who think this was a personal attack. Meanwhile, Lucilla's maid shares all the secrets with Thraex. Later, Macrinus comes to Thraex's home to pick up all the money from their bets. Instead of money, Thraex pays him with secrets. There are rebels planning to dethrone the twins. However, that plan has been delayed until certain gladiator is rescued from the arena. That night, the palace soldiers pick Lucilla up at her home. In the gladiators' quarters, Acacius and his men are sneaking in to rescue Hanno. However, the emperor's soldiers are already waiting to capture Acacius. The couple is taken to see the twins, and Geta scolds them for their betrayal. The emperor then announces that Acacius's death will be public. The next day, Ravi shows Hanno the shrine of the gladiator champions, and Hanno notices that Maximus's name has been scratched off. But in Maximus's grave, his armor and swords are still kept in good condition. On the wall, Hanno reads, "What we do in this life echoes in eternity." For the next gladiator fight, extra soldiers are protecting the main seats, and Lucilla is kept in shackles. Acacius is the first gladiator, and he must fight against soldiers of the Praetorian Guard. Acacius is wounded a couple of times, but he still manages to kill every soldier. Next, Hanno is sent out and starts fighting Acacius. Eventually, Acacius gets tired, so he tells Hanno that he knows his real identity and drops his swords before raising his hand as a sign of surrender. Acacius explains that he truly loves Lucilla and he would have died for Maximus. This makes Hanno drop his sword too, and the emperors get angry, so they order the archers to shoot. The arrows immediately kill Acacius, and Hanno asks the crowd if this is how Rome treats its heroes, because then the citizens should expect to be treated worse. Then the crowd begins booing the emperors, and the guards keep the people back while their leaders leave the Colosseum. In the evening, Macrinus visits Hanno to ask him why he let Acacius live. Hanno explains building a better Rome is possible, but Macrinus thinks that's an impossible dream and reminds Hanno he's just a tool. On the streets, the citizens are rioting and starting fires all over the place as they ask for the twins' heads. In the royal chambers, Geta and Caracalla begin arguing over what to do, and Caracalla blames everything on Geta, who responds by throwing water at his brother's face. Caracalla storms out of the room and Macrinus follows him to manipulate him. He says that Geta will blame Caracalla for everything in public, so Caracalla should confront him. Tired of having to share everything, Caracalla grabs a blade and cuts his brother's hand. Geta stops him from going further, but Macrinus appears and guides his hand to slash Geta's neck. In the morning, Lucilla visits Hanno and gives him Maximus's ring. In return, Hanno shares his condolences before they reconcile with a hug. Meanwhile, Caracalla takes over the throne and announces his monkey will be his first consul, while Macrinus will be his second. Macrinus presents Geta's head to the senators and explains he needs more power to protect their government, so they vote to make him leader of the Praetorian Guard. Afterward, Macrinus visits Lucilla to tell her that he used to be a slave to her father, and now he plans to end the imperial bloodline by becoming emperor himself. At the same time, Hanno gives the ring to Ravi, asking him to take it to Acacius' army in Ostia. Before leaving, Ravi gives Hanno the cell keys. The next day, Ravi reaches the general, who immediately agrees to help. At the Colosseum, Vigo announces this will be Hanno's last fight and shows him the wooden sword of freedom, which he can win if he defends his mother. Suddenly, Hanno opens the door and knocks Vigo down before slowly killing him. Then he goes to his father's grave to take his sword and armor. Afterward, Hanno enters the arena and finds Lucilla tied to a post, surrounded by rebel senators while the crowd chants his name. Royal soldiers enter the arena and the crowd boos them. But before they can attack, the slaves rush in to help Hanno fight with fair numbers. As a fierce battle ensues, Caracalla gets excited, but Macrinus is frustrated and tells a commander to call the cavalry. However, this can't be done because the cavalry is protecting the city, since Acacius's old army is coming from Ostia to invade. They still manage to spare a few soldiers, who soon enter the arena and start killing both slaves and senators without mercy. The crowd freaks out and a guard shoots an arrow, killing a spectator. While everyone is distracted, Macrinus uses the chance to kill Caracalla. In the arena, enough soldiers have been killed to create an opening, and Hanno tries to rescue his mother. At that moment, Macrinus shoots an arrow that pierces Lucilla's heart. Afterward, Macrinus leaves on a horse to join the army at the gates, so Hanno steals a horse to follow him. Minutes later, the Praetorian Guard meets Acacius's army, led by Ravi outside the city. Hanno appears in front of Macrinus and introduces himself as Lucius, the real heir to the throne. He tackles Macrinus to throw him off his horse, and the men begin fighting. Macrinus manages to break Hanno's sword and pushes him into the river, but the sword keeps bouncing on the armor. Hanno sees himself in the afterlife again and remembers his mother's last words before resurfacing. He punches Macrinus before retrieving his sword to cut off his arm, followed by a slash that finally kills him. After the body floats away, Hanno reminds the armies of his grandfather's dream of the perfect Rome. All the soldiers chant to show their support and agree not to fight anymore. That night, Lucius goes to the arena and takes some of Lucilla's blood before picking up some dirt in his father's name. Thank you for watching. For more content, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Subscribe.